This is Greg Malden, and you're listening to the Sheriff's Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to an exclusive episode of The Sheriff. Guys, today I am able to have another one of my idols with me right now. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have all heard the term the complete player. Me, as a big player, I wish sometimes that I could have been a little bit faster. I know that some of my teammates that were smaller players, they might wish that they were stronger or maybe tougher. But my guest today, ladies and gentlemen, had the combined speed, skill, toughness, and leadership, and in my opinion, was the most complete player of his era. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is a Stanley Cup champion, and I'm going to bring him right in right now. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brad May, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, thank you, Sean. I'm doing fantastic. You know what? First of all, even before I go into what you just said, you know, I've followed you, and it's amazing from your podcast, of course. I was a Buffalo Sabre before you arrived in Buffalo, and I had been traded to Vancouver. And I think the year 2000 was your maiden voyage. I had actually signed a contract that summer with, or maybe it was the following summer, but in 2000 with the Phoenix Coyotes. And but I followed you. I know where you traveled, what you've done. My buddies, obviously from Buffalo, Robbie Ray, Matthew Barnaby, told me about their experience with you, and I'm pleased to be here. And thank you for the nice compliments. You know what? I pride myself on, or prided myself on, you know, doing whatever it took. You know, wearing whatever hat, and I can honestly say, like, proudly, that, you know, I probably check all the boxes in many ways. You know, I was a first round draft pick. Came out of junior after winning a gold medal with the World Junior team in Canada, in Saskatoon in 1990-91 World Juniors. Make the Buffalo Sabres. I did go to Rochester at the end of my last junior year, but I was able to make the Buffalo Sabres the following training camp, which was fantastic for me. And 1,041 regular season games later, I went to the American Hockey League for 15 or 16 games with the Grand Rapids Griffins.
That's
so
right.
I can the players, or certainly can identify with playing in the minors, albeit it was at the end of my career, in a kind of leadership role, more importantly. But I took dumb penalties. I took major penalties. I scored big goals. I fought the toughest. I took advantage of weaker guys as well during my career, like we all do. It's all about timing and whatever happens in front of you, and you do it for your team. So I do proudly, I could say that I can not only converse, but I can understand whatever dilemma any type of player was going through, because I think I wore that hat at some point in time. And even today, if I didn't go down to the minors at the end of my career, to have those conversations with young players that are aspiring to make the NHL, albeit I did, but I can also speak to the relationships that I was able to garner with Thomas Tatar, who's an NHLer for the last 10, 12 years, 15, 13 years, whatever it's been, Justin Abdelkader, Brendan Smith, players like this that actually I had an experience with in the minors, and I can enlighten that young player on these experiences and what it takes to be a pro. And I didn't want to go at the end. Obviously, I wanted to stay in Detroit at the time, but it turned out to be a really, really good thing for me. And arguably, I love hockey because I went back and did that, and my career didn't end sourly. Some people would think so, but probably one of my favorite 5-6 weeks of hockey was in Grand Rapids with those young guys. And my son, who was 13 or 14 years old at the time, was closer in age to those players than I was at 38. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it was actually, in some ways, you know, they filled a void for me too, as you know, being a father for many years. I had conversations with players that you never would have if I wasn't that age and I hadn't had that experience. I wouldn't have known how to communicate to those guys. So great experiences. Anyways, thank you.
Yes. No, Brad, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for sharing all that because that was incredible. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm like at the edge of my seat listening to you, brother, right? But like, there's a few reasons why I'm so happy to have you on my show, man. And a couple of them I want to get into right now. Like, I usually have a little plan that I do with my show, but I got Brad May on, one of the most famous Buffalo Sabres of all time. And like, and like, what? May, Brad, what did the boys call you? Because I don't like calling you Brad and May. What did the boys call you?
Well, it's funny. Well,
They call you Maisie?
Well, my mother named me Bradley, Ley, and my mother could call me Bradley. I don't
But
think
that's it.
I don't think my dad's ever called me Bradley. My brother, when he wants to make a point, he'll call me Bradley, and a few teachers I had, and a few coaches. But beyond that, that was my given name, and it doesn't sound right when people call me Bradley. But I think through the years, I was always Mazer or Maisie,
Yeah.
like every
Yeah.
player has, the or the e at the end or the y at the end. But 1993, my life changed. Obviously, I scored a goal in the playoffs against Boston, which was obviously pretty awesome and still is, and it still plays going into the playoffs through the National Hockey League and different things. But Rick Jenneret coined me Mayday, and I'd never been called that prior. And pretty much beyond that, it's either Brad or Mayday, one of the two. And I'm actually, when I say it, it sounds like I'm a pompous ass, but when other people call me it, it's endearing to me for sure. And I think people are comfortable. I mean, that's how they know me now.
Yeah. So just Mayday or is it Maisie as well?
Well, I think some guys, depending, going back to my junior teammates, it's Maisie or Mazer. You know what I mean, guys? But then pretty much after 93.
After it happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Never-
Are you comfortable with me saying Mayday?
I love it.
Okay, cool. That's what I'm doing then. That's
Yeah,
what I'm doing, Mayday.
All right.
So, okay, so this is the thing, Mayday. I feel as a former guy that used to be part of the Buffalo Sabres organization that, that was the team that drafted me, just like you. I played in their system. I played their preseason, blah, 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 blah. I feel like I'm a part of that organization, okay? Alumnus. I feel that hockey in general, especially the newer generation that's only been watching hockey like the last 10 years, they're not giving the Sabre organization the respect that the organization deserves, okay? I know the team hasn't done well lately. Other teams have had to go through this as well. The point that I want to make is that you, sir, you played for this team the first 7 seasons of your career. You made the playoffs, Mayday, 5 out of those 7 years, and you guys were competitive group. It could have went either way. You had the best, as most of those years, you had the best goalie. There was always a chance that you guys could have won. You brought excitement to Western New York. You brought excitement all the way up to QEW, pretty much all the way to the GTA, was all Sabre Nation. I remember those training camps in St. Catharines on Niagara in the Lake, Sabre Nation. Sabre Nation is strong. The hockey culture is rich. And I have these arguments with these people that are trying to tell me that, Buffalo's the laughing stock, this, that. I'm like, listen, the Buffalo's not a good team right now. That will change. That area, that region, that organization is very strong. And I would like to get your opinion on that. Do you feel that it's getting a little bit of a bad name recently? And how proud is Brad May of being a Buffalo Sabre? And I'm sure you think of yourself as a Sabre for life.
Yeah, well, 100%. I'm a Sabre for life. I don't even care if they want to kick me out of that legion. The Buffalo Sabres have to me. They gave me my start, like yourself, Sean. And when going to Buffalo, not only are the fans and their fan base awfully strong. It was an amazing place for me to grow up. I played junior hockey in Niagara Falls, just down the road. Matter of fact, when I was drafted. At the draft, I was sitting in my seat and not knowing, who was going to select you, but Jerry Meehan came up. They made a trade, and the trade was for Phil Housley and Dale Hawerchuk. Scott Arneal and Jeff Parker went to Winnipeg as well with Phil Housley. Dale Hawerchuk was, that's when they made the trade, and they said that, after making the trade and announcing it, they said, Jerry Meehan, if I quote, maybe not perfectly, but he said, the Buffalo Sabres select a semi-local boy, Brad May, from the Niagara Falls Thunder. And that was like 25, 30 minutes down the highway, right? Across the border, and you're in Buffalo. And so I grew up there, for a couple years in Niagara Falls, but, the next 7 or 8 years of my life, I was married as I was playing with the Buffalo Sabres. I had my first son with in Buffalo. The people there are fantastic. So I agree with everything you just said. There's no question, though, their lack of success over many years, and it's not recent, it's many years. Probably the last great year. I know they made the playoffs when the Pugulas bought the team.
Yeah.
She had a pretty exciting team, and it was kind of remnants of their last real run, which was in 06 and 07.
Yeah.
They had a really good team with Danny Briere and Chris Drury and others. They deserve their criticism, because they haven't performed. But I'm here to say that I love being a Sabre. I love being recognized as a Sabre, and they'll figure it out, like you were saying. But the hard part about the National Hockey League and free agency and the way it's set up now, does that like class, like grade A, whatever you want to call it, the top prospect or top free agent, does he select the Buffalo Sabres? And that's not going to happen until these young players like Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin and Alex Tuck, who's recently been acquired there, they start building something, getting some momentum and some energy and some confidence. The best, those top free agents will look at Buffalo because it's a great community. It really is. I know it's down the road from Toronto, and people kind of, they like to dump on Buffalo a little bit. But tell you one thing, I could match my house in Buffalo, as that I bought and I lived in for a few years when I was in Buffalo. I can match it to any home in Southern Ontario or anywhere else, and I can tell you that my yard was just as nice as anybody else's in any location, along with all these new players and new things. Buffalo is an amazing place. So the problem for them is until they start winning, they're not going to get the respect. They're very much like the Phoenix Coyotes. Edmonton, of course, they've got two of the best players in the world now, and they are a destination, but they still struggle. It's not easy to come from the bottom and get back in the mix. And hopefully, Kevin Adams, their new GM or current GM, can actually put this together. But there's not a lot of believers outside of Buffalo, but I do know that they're doing the best they can at this moment. And sorry to keep talking here, but
I love it. I love it.
I know you played one game for the Sabres, and I'm not. Here's the thing. I played, 400 or 500 there. I don't even know. It doesn't matter if you played one game or 1,000 games for the Buffalo Sabres. And I'll tell you what, when the Pugulas bought the team, they invited every Buffalo Sabre that they could reach across the globe and paid for their flights. And I think 70 guys showed up or whatever it was. And I'm not sure of how many players. A lot of guys couldn't make it. But Terry Pegula stood up in front of all of us and called up Gilbert Perreault. And he came up and he had a trophy or a bottle of wine or whatever the offering was. And he was like, guys, Gilbert Perreault is the longest serving member of the Buffalo Sabres, played the most games, and he said that, I'm not sure of the number, but he played, and he is the guy, right? He was the first selection of the Buffalo Sabres, and he was still there. And he called up a guy named Steve Smith. Steve Smith's from Ontario, kind of in the Cobourg, Belleville area. And Steve played, I believe, one game like yourself, one or two. He didn't play many. And he called up Steve and he gave him a big gift. And there's 70 other guys in the room, and we didn't know where this conversation was headed, but he called Steve up and he said, listen, I don't care if you've played one game or 1,000 games like Gilbert, you're a member of the Buffalo Sabres, and you're going to be treated like that. And it doesn't matter. Once you're part of you put that crest on. It was actually a really moving conversation that he had with all of us, in front of all of us, and it really put it in perspective. And you should be proud as well. And for a guy like me, and I heard that right from the top, it's actually a really nice feeling to know that you're part of something special. So That's all.
100%. I really appreciate you saying some of that stuff, Mayday, and like so thank you for that for sure. See now you understand why you're the guy that I want to talk about this. This is great. This is incredible, man. I'm loving it. I appreciate it. So like, and you're right. The Sabres need to win, Brad. They need to win, right? And they will. They will. Like I think now that the Eichel thing is done with, and like it looks now like the Sabres actually made a decent trade like with Eichel, and and the thing is, Mayday, is that the Buffalo Sabres, like when we were there, our eras, it was different because, in my opinion, and you'll have to give me your opinion because you played on multiple other NHL teams. The Buffalo Sabres seemed to be like a community team. Like it was about the community, and the team got a lot of the players, not the majority, but some of them that were somewhat local, like you, or that had ties to the local areas and stuff. Like when I was playing, it was like Andrew Peters, a kid from St. Catharines. Draft him high. He's probably going to want to play in Buffalo if he's from St. Catharines. Tim Connolly, a guy from upstate New York. Like he's going to want to be there if it's somewhat community. And I think the Sabres, I like their core now, but I think they really need to go after those guys, those southern Golden Horseshoe Ontario guys, those upstate New York guys. And I think they can build a nucleus that will actually want to be there. Like, and we heard the management say that after Eichel left. We want guys that want to play for the Buffalo Sabres, right? And that's the little bit of a difference than some of the other teams. I think there's more pride in community, and I hope that they can get there, brother.
Yeah, you know what? It's all about how you sell it, right? So the bottom line is the team has to sell itself, and that success or lack of it obviously speaks volumes. So, I don't know where the priorities would lie, but there's no question you have to foster a culture that players, not only do they want to be there, and listen, you've got guys from all over the world, and the game has gotten much grander, right?
Yeah.
Players from all different regions, and southern Florida, Atlanta, California, Texas, players that were never drafted out of those regions before are now being drafted. The Canadian, if it was 80% Canadian when I started, it's probably under 50% or thereabouts. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
It's
But
under 50, yeah.
bottom line is, listen, it's great. I got to play in some really nice destinations after Buffalo. Great cities. Vancouver's one. Denver, Colorado, amazing with the Avalanche. Phoenix, Anaheim, where I had an unbelievable run, and it was just playing on just an amazing team and a great group of players and people. But there's a lot of challenges to northern climates because if a
Yeah.
free agent's looking to see something different, because it's also an experience. It's not necessarily, it should all come down to the hockey. But when you actually start weighing out pros and cons, a free agent, depending on his situation and his age, may select somewhere different. Maybe not because he didn't want to come to Buffalo or Toronto or Edmonton. Maybe it's because, hey, I've got 5 years left of this wonderful game. Maybe I can, see what it's like to go live down in one of these other climates, a Carolina, a Florida, a Nashville. So, I mean, and then there's money involved with taxes, and there's so many, right? It's not about people, shunning a certain location. Bottom line, though, is you have to develop that culture. And as a former player, as a guy that I think I know what I'm talking about, you could do that in Timbuktu and have
Yeah.
an amazing team and an amazing time. I can live anywhere. It doesn't matter whether it's snow up to your eyeballs or, sunshine all day long. I could play hockey anywhere because it's a great game. It's just you want to hang and do it with the guys that are like-minded, and what's the culture, right? And you could take any of those wonderful locations, not saying Buffalo's not one of them, but the better, geographic locations. And if you had just a bunch of random guys that don't not get along, because I think we all get along, but that you have different philosophies and however the team would be built, that place would be a miserable place to play too if you don't have
Yeah.
those relationships and experiences. So, yeah, I think for Buffalo, it's obviously going to be a grind to get back to that level, but it does take time. But I'll tell you one thing, you know how you do it? You win. But how do you win? You draft well, and you can't get it wrong. You have to make the right trades. Um, you got, and speaking of all that, I think Alex Tuck's going to do a great job in Buffalo. He may never be the same player as Jack Eichel, but all of a sudden, the sum of all its parts, right? Peyton Krebs could turn to, we'll still find out what type of player he'll become. And then they get a first-round draft pick as well, and who's that going to be, right? Along an Owen Power, who, I haven't seen a lot of him, but I saw him in juniors for a few games before it was canceled this past year. He's going to be like a Hedman in Tampa. He's 6'5". He can bomb it from the point. He can jump up in the rush. He can skate with the best guys, and he's got a little bite to his game, apparently. There's a guy. Maybe that's the future captain, but he's going to grow into it a bit for, the next few years. And I don't think you give these guys, certainly on a team like Buffalo as it sits, the captaincy right away, unless it's completely warranted. I think you got to, dangle it out in front of there and see who's going to step forward and not only perform to their, best of their ability, but do all the other things that are necessary in that location. And it is community. The neighborhood in Buffalo, the people of Buffalo, look at, if you've watched as a Bills fan, Bills Nation, Sabres can have an unbelievable following, and they do. I think people are just a little upset at this point, but if that player, whoever that would be, and I don't want to put pressure on Owen Power, but if it's him or the next guy, it's an honor to actually be that guy or be a part of that group. And you have to resonate with the fan base. And, and that's the cool part. And I hope these young players understand that. It's not just about putting your skates on and trying your best. Because, one thing I understood and learned early on in my career, if you say the word try, like I'm trying, or I tried my best, or, I tried. Well, try is for losers, because you either do or you don't, right? So that's right. That's the thing. You got to get rid of certain words out of your vocabulary, because it sets the tone. So I would like nobody to ever say they tried again, because the truth is you either do or you don't. And it may come quickly or it may come later, but you got to keep going. You got to keep persevering.
Right on, man. Amen to that. I hope all the listeners were paying close attention to that, because that's really, really important stuff. And I definitely appreciate you saying that, Mayday. We're definitely going to get back to Buffalo. I got a smile on my face right now, Mayday, because I'm excited to talk about the beginnings for you, because you're a big character, dude. And with my huge characters, I love to talk about how they grew up. Now, I know that you were technically born in Toronto, but you grew up in the town of Markham, though, right, Mayday?
Yeah. Yes, and if forever, and I don't know if I'm the first time I ever filled out the form of like where you're from, like when you got to Buffalo, and it just traveled. I think it's always said I'm from Toronto, but I said that because people be like, "Where's Markham?" And I don't ever want to answer that. At the time, I'm like, "Listen, you know where Toronto is. I'm from that area. Good enough." I'm not from Toronto. From Markham and Stouffville, which is even a smaller town, but effectively they're the same place now because of the growth of that whole area, Greater Toronto. I grew up in Goodwood, which was even a smaller 500 people or whatever it is, farming community, 10 minutes northeast of Stouffville. My parents split up when I was 10 years old. Fantastic people. They just didn't see eye to eye anymore, and they moved on. They took great care of my brother and I. You know what? Great. So that's how I grew up. There was a little bit of, you had to persevere. It doesn't work. I mean, I feel bad for some, I say all kids that don't have two parents or two active parents. Don't necessarily have to live in the same household, but they have to be engaged and help you. And I'm proud to say that I never went without for anything. When I was 22 years old, I found out I had a sister, which this is an unbelievable story. I found out I had a sister, 22 and a half years old. My mother comes down. My sister is my blood sister. My mom and dad had a baby in the 60s. And through their upbringing back then, they felt at that time they couldn't do it to get, at that time they weren't married. That was a big deal back then. So yes, my mother, it was. But my mother, what a warrior she is. She had she did put her daughter up for adoption. obviously very hurtful. And the only two people in the world, which is sad about the whole story, is nobody else knew. I think my mom's best friend did, but nobody else in the world ever knew. Their parents never knew, their other friends never knew. And my mom and dad got married 3 years later, had my brother and I, unbelievable run, together. And it just, that their relationship ended. But I'm 22 years old. My mom comes down and lays this information on me. I meet my sister in Toronto 2 weeks later. It was actually the day before my birthday, and I played in Toronto on November 29th, my birthday. I met my sister at dinner at my mother's house with my family. Unbelievable. She looks like us. She acts like us. She's unbelievable. What a great girl, big sister. And so my family, we could actually, be on one of those talk shows, right, for a whole week. You never nail every situation that we've gone through, but very, very, I don't know, it molds you, right? But we have a great relationship going forward to this day. My parents were awesome. My family, right? Family is a big deal, and you need family, and you need and if it's not immediate, you need mentors or guardians that are going to take you to the ice, to the arenas, drive you around, tournaments, pay for things. You know what? It's not an inexpensive sport to play, right? So you need a lot of help. So with that being said, I was 13 years old. I got cut from the AA team in Markham, which is, I never played AAA tournaments, so never went to the Pee Wee tournament that I believe you did, because you played in Toronto and in the GTA there, and or MTHL, I think it was called at the time.
MTHL at the time,
yeah. So I never had those experiences, but you know what? The smaller tournaments, and if you're good enough, they're going to find you. But I played house league hockey when I was 13, and I played house league hockey when I was 14 years old, which means effectively playing with brand new, beginner hockey players, or guys that are, frankly, terrible at the game, right? Like, not terrible, but just not very, certainly not.
I know what you mean.
But those experiences were the greatest thing. 5 years later, I was a first-round draft pick to the National Hockey League. So don't tell me, again, I tried hard. No, you know what? At the end of the day, there's no excuses. You have two choices, north or south, and directions to go. And I think all these little stumbling blocks and failures, or they're not failures. Nothing's a failure, but all these experiences that you did not succeed, right? I'm a quote guy too, right? So the definition of success is the realization of a predetermined goal. So you can be successful in anything you want to do. Just set your goals, achieve at an achievable level. And then once you start being successful, listen, I want to walk to the store to get a can of Coke. I get to the store, I buy a can of Coke. I'm successful in that endeavor, right? And if the more successes that you have, it breeds success, right? Success breeds success. So anyways, with all that being said, I had great teammates in junior. I had great teammates in Buffalo from the likes of Pat LaFontaine, who's a dear friend to this day, Dale Howarchuk, who just recently passed away, one of the greatest, big brothers you could ever have, and just fantastic. But like Colin Patterson and Dave Anderchuk and Randy Hillier and Rob Ray and all these players, Dave Hannon, Wayne Presley, Bob Sweeney, I can go on and on about these guys that left an indelible mark on me. And a lot of times I'm doing things, I think of these guys at different situations, whether driving in a car and not doing something wrong, eating the right foods, whatever it is. And I'm 50 years old, and I still think back at those moments where it changed for me, as small as these things would be, who actually made the difference, right? Who left that impression on you. And I try to impart that on my kids and whoever else I come by. But the game of hockey is, in my estimation, it's the best, because you can't do it alone. You can't win alone, and you have to be part of the team. And being part of a team is maybe one of the greatest things that could ever come out of this life.
You know what? Like, I agree 100%, and I'm really happy to hear you say that, man, because I honestly have feelings that are so similar to the things that you were just saying, and it's a beautiful thing at the end of the day, brother, because that's what it really is all about. Now, it's funny that you brought up the team because like this story is even better for me because you're telling me, buddy, you played house league when you were 14 years old, right? So when did you finally make the Markham Majors AAA team?
Never
How
did.
old were you? You never did.
Well, we were never, sorry, I shouldn't say it like that because our double A team was the best players in Markham. Now,
Okay.
Markham, the city of Markham, the way it is today, where other players like Steven Stamkos and I don't want to miss anybody, but him being like the cream of the crop from that area.
Yeah.
Markham, the city of Markham became Markham, the town of Markham that I came from. Unionville and Thornhill, which was probably even bigger than Unionville and Markham. Well, that's now all Markham. So it went from being 25,000 people to being over 100,000. It might even be over 300,000 today, the city of Markham. So not to mention Markham Waxers or whatever they're called today.
Yeah.
Have been amalgamated. They've actually been part of the AAA loop, the Toronto teams and everything else.
Yep.
Where I was part of a smaller town that traveled with. We played against Pickering and Oshawa. A lot of good players out of these places that I played against. Adam Foote, Keith Primo, our two guys. Chris Snell played with me in the World Juniors. A lot of players, but Peterborough Pete's. So we were in a different loop altogether. So I came back. I did play midget double A with the best team that Markham could field. But I went from, I want to say, I went from that year, the 14 or I was turning 15 or whatever it was, and I played Junior B for half the year. In Junior B, we played against the Wexford Raiders, right?
Yeah.
Who played for Wexford.
Yeah.
They were in the Metro Junior B League at the time, along with Henry Carr and St. Mike's and Markham.
Pickering Panthers.
And so that loop, but I only played a minute a game and got my head shaved, and I was young. I think I was grade 9 or 10 because I'm a young guy. I'm a late birthday. So whatever it was, I think might have been my grade 10 year. And I show up with a bald head and they shave my eyebrow, and we can get into hazing at another time. But with that being said, just, what? I love talking about it. I love talking about it.
Yeah. What I wanted to talk to you about was the Niagara Falls Thunder. I've heard from several sources, including Steve Ludwig and others, just how historical, really rich the culture is for that team. Now, what was the situation of you going there, Mayday? Like what was the draft status? Were you a walk-on? Did you jump up in the draft that year? Like what was the scenario going in?
I love it, and forgive me, I talk a lot, right? So
no, I love it, man. Talk as much as you need to, buddy.
So when I moved to Markham, my parents had split. I'm 10 years old. I go down to Markham, which was 20 minutes down the road where my mother grew up. And anyways, we're living in a townhouse, my mom, my brother, and I. And I make the team, and the team is coached by a guy, Mike Primo, who is Keith Primo and Wayne Primo's father. So Keith and I are born like 5 days apart. We're late birthdays. We played together in Markham. Unbelievable, right? Comes up to my draft year, which was, I guess I'm 16 years old, I guess, at that time.
Yep.
Yeah, I would have been 16. And that year, Keith had already played 1 year. He was an underage pick to the Hamilton Steelhawks. So he had already played 1 year in Hamilton.
Yeah.
I was back playing midget hockey. So Keith was ended up being a third overall draft pick to the Detroit Red Wings, right? So I got picked. I was in the 6th round. I was the 9th pick by the Hamilton Steelhawks. So there's 8 guys picked that draft prior to me. And I think it was a run like three players in a row who they selected. And I was the 3rd in the 6th round. So the 9th guy are from Niagara or from Hamilton. That summer, about a month later, I'm dreaming about playing at Copps Coliseum and working out, however you did it back then. Thinking I'm going to play in Copps Coliseum, hopefully, and that's where they had the Canada Cup and Gretzky, Lemieux, and they moved to Niagara Falls. They announced it. The ownership changed. They moved to Niagara Falls, became the Niagara Falls Thunder their first year. So, which if you go, I love history. So the history of the Steelhawks, they were the Brantford Alexanders and the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds prior to that. As the link camp comes that way. And the Niagara Falls Thunder today are the Erie Otters. So there is Niagara, but that came from Mississauga, the Ice Dogs, Don Cherry's
Yeah.
team. They
Yeah.
moved there after the void of Niagara Falls Thunder leaving to Erie. So, anyways, I'm in Niagara Falls. I'm a 9th pick. Call me a 9th round pick, doesn't matter. And I show up to training camp, with 70 other guys, and 15 of them were already on the team probably, and rolled in there and hadn't been in a fight in my life, or other than my brother every day. And I took Taekwondo all summer, which I strongly, I think the discipline and the workout and everything else, but I took Taekwondo, and I got in a fight training camp and I won. I can't remember whatever, the first one, whether it was good or bad, but I was in the fight. And I earned my way into the first exhibition game, which was at Chesswood Arenas in Toronto against Marlies, because the Toronto Marlies ended up leaving and became the Hamilton Dukes a year later. But playing against the Toronto Marlies, I get in a fight with a guy named John Blum, I believe his name was. Really big dude. And I did pretty good. And okay, so now whatever else happens, I sign a 2-way card. The first weekend of the year we had games, and then I signed a 2-way card which said, you're not going to be in the OHL the whole year. You're going to play some Junior B games with the Hamilton Canucks. So it was a Wednesday night, but we had guys suspended from going and doing something stupid the first weekend of the season.
Yeah.
And so I got another 3 games to play in Niagara Falls before I was going to play probably, a dozen games in Junior B before he got called up again. But the promise from Bill LaForge, my coach, was you're going to play about 30 to 35 games and, develop and play down, with the Junior B team. Well, so happens on Thursday night, we played in the North Bay Centennials, and they got 3 players that are 6'5". They got Sean Antosky. They got a guy named Mark Major. Mark Major,
I heard about him.
Right? And they had a guy named John Van Kessel. John Van Kessel just came back from the LA Kings training camp. I believe he was a 3rd-round draft pick. He had just got back, and these guys were running around. Well, we win the game, which was awesome. We ended up having the best team in Canada for a long while that year. But Brian Fogarty broke Bobby Orr's record. Stan Drulia got the all-time record of points in the OHL. We had 7 or 8 first-round draft picks, to the National Hockey League that played on that team. But and me being one of them, but certainly at that time, no. So I go to practice on a Wednesday night after we already had practice with the Thunder, and I practice with the Hamilton Canucks, the Niagara Falls Canucks. But I have to play Thursday night against North Bay. So late in the game, I'm sitting on the bench beside the first rounder, Mark Lawrence, and I'm like, hey, wouldn't it be great to fight that guy? One of those, because this guy was running around just terrorizing our team. And my coach, Bill LaForge, heard me. Imagine this, right? Unintended consequences, right? Like, he hears me say this, and he says to me, he goes, hey, Brad, you want him? And I'm like, what are you going to say? I'm not going to say no. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, all right, get over the boards. So I jump over the boards, and as I'm skating to the to the face-off, he's like, hey. And I look over my shoulder with my bad mullet, right? Acne face. And I look at him, and he says, watch out, he's a lefty. And I don't know what the hell that means, other than that could be bad, right? So I get to the face-off. Long story short, we get in a fight with this guy. He's 6'5". I'm 170 pounds, maybe, like with rocks in my pockets. Like, I'm not a big guy at that time. And 2 minutes later, after the fight's ended, there's blood. Like, I'm wearing a white shirt, and my white shirt is like crimson. Like there's blood everywhere. And I go into the locker room because I get kicked out of the game, and the trainer's like, he's worried. He's like, what? Are you okay? He asked me, and I'm like, I wipe my face, and I'm like, I think I am, just like that. Other than like being tired, heavy breathing, and all of that was not mine. So I did really, really good, like really good. And I'm not saying that to make fun of John Van Kessel.
No, I get it.
This guy was legit. But I had a great moment. It was my coming out party. So the next day, I show up we're playing Kitchener the next night. Afternoon, after school, we go to the arena, pack our bag, put it on the bus to drive to Kitchener. And it's a Friday night, and they have a player there called Rob Sangster. And he led the OHL in penalty minutes that year, like 400 minutes or something like that.
Jeez.
And I think I was number 2 with like 300 and something. But
Yeah, 304.
that
Yeah.
night, 304. So that night, well, that afternoon, just prior to getting on the bus, Bill calls me into his office, our coach, Bill LaForge, and he looks at me and he goes, "Sugar?" I don't know who Sugar is. So he nicknamed me Sugar Ray from the night before. He goes,
Okay.
"Sugar," and he grabs it, and it used to be like one of those old, no, like the kids won't understand this, but it was a carbon copy kind of thing, that the card you used to sign, right?
Yeah.
Almost when
Yep.
you're at a gas station way back when, right? And he grabs the paper and he goes, and he rips the card I signed, or like the shuttle
The
between
two-way.
the two-way. He rips it up.
Yeah.
He goes, you're here to stay." And
Yeah.
and I never looked back, and I got in 54 fights, and I played on, in a grinding role for that team. And we had 6 guys in the top 10 scoring, or 5 guys in the top 10 scoring in the league. So he basically set the plan. He's like, "You're not draftable for another year. You're going to do what I say, whatever
Oh,
is going
because your late birthday.
late birthday, so I can't get drafted
Oh,
until year." So he's like,
that's right.
You'll kill penalties. You won't play some night. You'll play, but you're not going to play a lot of minutes some nights, depending on the thing. Because I've got guys that are running, that are really good, and this is their time. Certainly the drafted or draftable players, and we ended up losing in the OHL final. But it's funny, right? Again, these experiences that a lot of people would probably, I can say this now because I was successful in that, but a lot of these trying moments are moments where you either dig in or you quit, or you give up. And I don't know. I think it's a collection of all of that. But that's my story in Niagara Falls. That's how I made it. I wasn't penciled in to make it, certainly not in ink. And you got to make your way. You got to do whatever it takes. So yeah, a lot of nights that you were scared to death, going into certain arenas because maybe you didn't have the energy that day or whatever.
Yep.
But yeah, you know what? There's no excuses. So that's my start, and I'm actually awfully proud of it. Like yourself, like every other player that made it, there's certain moments that are watershed moments that if that moment didn't happen, things could have went completely sideways, right? And that moment of getting that card, and maybe that gave me the courage to fight the next night that I otherwise wouldn't have, or whatever. And
Yeah.
talking about fighting, of course the game's changed, and it should, and whatever. I miss it. I'm the one guy, I don't know how. I loved it. I loved every bit of it. Certain days I didn't, because you're afraid, or you got beat up the night before or whatever. But very, very, I miss that part of the game because it meant a lot to me, but also my teammates back then. But that's the way the game was played. It was organized that way, right? Teams had 4 or 5 guys on each bench for energy. And today, when you say for energy, people maybe don't understand it because the game is different, and
Yes.
you get energy off a dumb penalty and you score a power play goal. That's where energy comes from, or a block shot. It doesn't come from fights necessarily. So I understand that, but I'm really excited that I can actually say that I was part of 2 decades of hockey that was actually a lot of fun to play.
And Mayday, you're absolutely right, and you should scream it out loud, because I'm telling you, man, it's a celebration. I try to tell certain guests that I have on my show. I mean, Brad May, understand that you're in the top 40 all time for penalty minutes, right? You know that you're number 37, right?
Yep.
You know that there's only what is there? There's 357 players. That's it, that have played 1,000 games. That's it. You're in a very, very small, like very, very special group, right? Now, saying that, those are just stats. Sorry, go ahead. Yes, please.
No, what's amazing about that, and thank you. I was the 241st guy to do it. 241st.
Wow.
At the end of 2009. And
so since then, there's been a few, but
there's been a few. And I think that, the longevity of the game changing, from being so physical to or it's still like excruciating for players, right? I mean, it's a tough schedule, but 241st. But the coolest part of that moment in Toronto, my hometown, or very close to being my hometown, I got traded to the Leafs, and Red Kelly, the late Red Kelly, gave me that silver stick that Wayne Simmons just got, right?
Yeah.
Red Kelly presented that to me. Red Kelly was the first Toronto Maple Leaf to play 1,000 games, or play played his 1,000th game for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Red Kelly was number 1. I was number 21 in Toronto. Imagine that. The Leafs have been around over 100 years. There's
Wow.
Well, I think now there might be about 27 or 8 guys now, because there's been a few since. I had the honor to actually stand at center ice, but the 21st guy in a 90-year period, pretty cool.
Yeah, it's extremely cool.
Yeah,
it's extremely cool. So now, Mayday. Here's the thing, though. There's history in every sport. Hockey is such a unique sport, bro, with how our game has developed, how it's changed. There was certain years that contributed to our game changing big time. And I think the biggest year was the 2004-2005 lockout, when the players came back, and as soon as you touched a guy, any part of his body with your stick, it's a penalty. As soon as you gave an extra shot in front of the net, all of a sudden those are penalties. That never existed before. You could hook a guy, and if you weren't doing it too bad, it wasn't a penalty. You could punch a guy as hard as you could, right in the face, and as long as it was a high intense part of the game, the ref wouldn't call it.
Yeah.
The game was very different. Now, Mayday, when you played, I believe those were like the golden years. Okay.
Dude.
I try to preach to people the 80s and 90s. Okay. That was the time when our beautiful game, who's struggling so much now in the United States in popularity and in TV ratings and this and that, and we can get into that, but our beautiful game was at its highest goals per game and its highest fights per game. So what does that tell me, Mayday? That tells me that our game was entertaining. It was high scoring. It was lots of action. There was rivalry. There was build-up. There was the oh my God, I wonder who they're going to start tomorrow night. Do you think Buffalo's going to start Ray, May, and Barnaby? Oh man, the game's missing that, right? And it was so important when you played.
Yes, it really was important. Call it a sideshow, but it was a big part of the energy in those buildings on a Tuesday night in November or January or February. And back then, that was 1992-93, the highest scoring year, right? Mario Lemieux won the scoring race. Pat LaFontaine came second. Dougie Gilmore, Howard Chuck, Adam Oates all had hundreds of points, 120 or 15 points. It was unreal. I think there was over 10 guys with over 100 points that year, if I'm not mistaken. You know what? Here's the thing: the new players, the younger generation, it has changed. I'm okay with that, but do a little homework. Don't just look back. And by the way, yeah, on TV it looks different, right? Camera angles have changed. The players, of course, are better today, 100%. Like every sport, golfers are better. Football players are in better shape and faster and stronger. All of sport is better, but we had a great time back then, and it was. I remember where you're going into certain places and certain arenas, depending who was there, exactly where you're like, oh my God, I hope he got hurt yesterday. But it was palpable. You could really feel it, and you could feel that energy. The game I think is in a great place globally. I think it really is. But for me, I would say that passion is displayed differently, right? I'm not a part of it. I'm not a player anymore, so it's not my game. It's not our game anymore. It's the young guys that are playing it today, or some of the old guys, and they have the ability to change these things if they really wanted to. I think if you look at how these guys skate, truly in 1990-91 when I started 91 season, some defensemen really couldn't skate backwards. Like, could not start skating backwards and get up to top speed. They would turn and skate forwards and then pivot, to get back into the play. They even say that, where today, I mean, the defensemen and players, they're so good at what they do, right? So there's so much to really gravitate to for the sport. I know the world's changed and everything else, but people look at it as violent. It's not as bad as what it appears to be, especially when you're in tune to what the game is, right? Those hits, yeah, they hurt. Yeah, it hurts, and it hurts maybe but if you're gonna get hurt fighting, then work hard and not get hurt, right?
Yeah.
Get better, be smarter, pick your spot better, whatever it is. So I think there's always a room or availability to change and to kind of morph into whatever has to be, but I love the game of hockey. As we're sitting here, can't wait to see what teams are going to, emerge come the playoffs. But then there's nothing better than the first round of the playoffs.
I agree with you 100%, and it's going to be really exciting to talk playoffs. What I want to ask you though, Mayday, is because it's awesome that you had an opportunity to be a first rounder, right? It's different when you're a first rounder compared to the rest of the draft, especially when you're in the first part of the draft. Now, I want to talk about the 1990 draft. First of all, the year that you had your draft year for Niagara, like I want the listeners to kind of understand. So we talked about the first year. This guy steps in, he takes the role of enforcer his first year in Major Junior. Gets over 300 penalty minutes, over 50 fighting majors, you said, right, Mayday?
Yes.
50 fighting majors? 54. That's incredible. Took everybody on. Now you come in your draft year. You're a veteran now. Dude, 61 games, 33 goals, 58 assists, 91 points, still putting up a strong 223 penalty minutes. That is a very, very golden draft year stat right there, my friend. That is well deserving of a very, very high draft selection. How high were you rated that year? What was the excitement like? Were you a first rounder the whole year? Did you move up? What was Central Scouting all about that year?
So I never had an agent, until that Christmas. So it was my second year in junior. I had met with a number of, really nice men that, and in that case, they were all men. So, but that came to my house and, talked to mom and dad. And we just said, listen, this is not even part of it. You got to go and do it, whatever. It's not important at this moment. I mean, you could have an agent and play like shit and never get drafted. So
exactly.
You got to go play, right? So, but it was around Christmas time is when I actually, made a choice on my agent, and that was Pat Morris.
Right on.
And Don Meehan from Newport Sports. They have a number of players and many players over the years, but that was the first time. So I got invited to the Toronto Maple Leaf game. It was it was like December 22nd or something like that, whatever it was. So I had come home from Niagara Falls. I went to the game, Maple Leaf Gardens. Afterwards, my agent, or soon-to-be agent, Pat Morris and Donnie, took me out for drinks. They had drinks, but took me out afterwards.
Where'd you go? Do you remember?
We went. I want to say we went to PM Toronto's or something like that. It was right on College Street, but it was like
right
on. Whatever restaurant it was, Wendell Clark, Joey Kosher, and Brent Fedek. Because the Detroit Red Wings were playing Toronto that night. And I'm sitting at this table. I'm not drafted yet, right? I got 6 more months to wait. I don't know. So at this moment, I know that I'm getting, they're starting to talk. I'm playing on the left wing with Keith Primo, who I think he had 130 or 125 points that year. And it was him and Mike Ricci, from the Ontario Hockey League, and Owen Knoll, and the three of them were touted and probably helped us, right? The rest of my team, because, scouts are in the building to see what Primo's doing. And then all of a sudden,
everybody's coming.
Knowing all that, I got to meet Wendell, and I got to meet Joey Kosher and Brent Fedek. And the conversation I had at dinner, my dinner, but for them, it was just after the game, whatever it was. Joey said, whatever you do, kid, he goes, don't spend all your energy. Don't waste your hands in junior, because there's going to be a hell of a lot of fighting to do when and if you make it to the National Hockey League or pro. So I heard that and I'm like, oh, geez, and Joey's got like the mangled hands, right? Tough. I think he's one of the toughest. Could be
of all time.
Could be considered the toughest of all time, right?
Yeah.
Like in that conversation. Yeah. And of course, his teammate Bob Probert would be the king, right? At that time. But I think Bob got more fights in many cases because nobody wanted to fight Joey. That's how
No
tough
one wanted him. Yeah.
So, but then you got Wendell Clark, who's like the pride of Toronto, and of course we all grew up watching him, and it was a cool moment for me. So that probably sold me on my agent, and then from that point on, I want to say I met with, I think at the time it was 21 NHL teams. I think it was 21.
Okay.
Maybe 22 teams, and I interviewed with 15 of them going into the draft, but I was probably projected somewhere in the first round, but I didn't know where really. I can't remember what Central Scouting had of that, but I know I had interviews with some teams that it was actually apparent that, oh my gosh, I'm meeting with the New York Islanders and they were picking number 6. They ended up picking a guy named Scott Sissons, but I know that those interviews, they weren't interviewing you, you know what I mean? There was an opportunity maybe, or they at least doing their homework. So the New Jersey Devils were picking number 10 or 11, which I believe they picked Brodeur, that spot. The New York Rangers were picking 12th, and I had a great interview with David McNabb. And honestly, when they selected a kid named Michael Stewart out of college, but that was the first time in the draft where, you know, you don't want to take anything for granted, but when they selected Michael Stewart, I remember sitting beside my family and my girlfriend, who's my wife today of 28 years.
Wow.
Sitting beside them, like our family and Bridget, and that was the first time I was like, oh my God, my heart dropped. And so now when I watch the draft, like I'm saying about, you know, having the ability to talk to whoever it is, right? All ages or all players. Yes, I got picked shortly thereafter, but I had that letdown. And you hear about these players that sit all day into the second day, and some players don't get drafted. You know what? It's heartbreaking, but it's what you do when you are selected, right? Whatever number that ends up being. But yeah. Anyways, I got drafted to Buffalo in that trade, and it was unreal. It was. I remember it. When I'm telling the story, I can remember exactly how I was feeling.
So where was the draft?
Vancouver.
It was in Vancouver. So obviously you went.
Yeah, oh yeah, I flew out to Vancouver. It was the first year, I believe, that they televised the NHL draft. So TSN.
No way.
I think it was, if I may be wrong, but I think it was the first time. And they filmed the first day, and I want to say the draft ended, or the window of TV ended after like the 16th pick or something. So some players got screwed over because they, you know, moved into the next day or whatever. But
Yeah.
I made the window of time, and that was
Yeah.
right. Grandma and Grandpa back home watching on TSN, and but
man.
I was in Vancouver.
Oh, that's so awesome. Do you remember that night going out after? Like,
So it's not a kid-friendly show, maybe, but I do. I remember exactly where we went. We went to a place called Richards on Richards, which was Dick on Dick's was the nickname, and it was, yes. So it was on Richard Street. Anyways, it was a great bar. All hockey players know it. But I remember going there afterwards with a bunch of the guys that got drafted, and my brother and his buddy and my girlfriend, and it was unreal. It was unreal. And yes, we did drink. Probably shouldn't have, obviously.
oh, I mean,
But yeah, you know what? It was an unbelievable celebration. I do remember going back to a hotel though, like a few hours after the draft, where we met all the other players that were selected. Because after I was picked, after doing some interviews and stuff, you just want to go and hang with your family. I think we took off and had lunch or something. Other players were picked, right? So we all were able to congregate in the one room as Buffalo Sabres and you know, kind of converse, and then, you know what, compete against one another in 3 months, right? When training camp started. So
yeah.
it was cool. I got to meet like the brass in Buffalo. And again, talking about the legacy of Buffalo, the guys that were around were Craig Ramsey. He just won a medal, I believe, with the Slovak team, right? In the Olympics. He was a head coach, but he was on the scouting staff. Don Luce, Larry Carriere, Jerry Meehan. Great. And they're all great Buffalo Sabres players.
Yes.
And they were all
community.
Another guy named Rudy Miguel. He was a big guy in you know, management. It was just a cool time to be selected. I think every year would be for, and every kid has their own story. But the neat thing for me, which really brought it home, is I played junior hockey in Niagara Falls, man. 25 minutes. It was like I was picked by the hometown team. And, other than being Toronto, it would be, it was the closest to where I played junior hockey and became a player. So, yeah, I'm grateful for Buffalo for sure.
Oh yeah, 100%. But that see that part is some of the things that I want to magnify, because I don't think people understand how big that region is.
Yeah.
That Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, Welland, all the way up to Burlington, man, all the way up to Oakville, let's say. When I was in the organization, that was all Sabre territory.
Yeah.
Training camp was Niagara-on-the-Lake, St. Catharines every year. Man, it was so awesome, Mayday. It was so awesome, and I just can't wait till the team's good again, and the respect comes back, and then they start doing like the little inside stories, and people just start learning, because it's such a rich history, Mayday. And like, I believe that when you were there, I think that was I know they were good like in the beginning and stuff like that. Don Luce was a huge part of my journey as well. I think that when you got there, though, at the Buffalo Memorial Auditorium, Teddy Nolan, when Razor got on the team, when Barnaby finally got on the team, the passion that was in that arena, the odd, man, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think. That's got to be one of the richest hockey eras in hockey, don't you think, buddy? When you first started with the Sabres,
I think from small teams or small towns, the Winnipeg Jets would be considered one of those. The St. Louis Blues and the Buffalo Sabre. I think. Yeah. Obviously, the league's expanded and it's bigger, but those three markets are really, really integral to the National Hockey League. And thank goodness Winnipeg got a team back right after. Them leaving, but with St. Louis and Buffalo, very, very similar. I mean, St. Louis is a bigger city, but the history and the cool part too, and because it's not all about hockey, that neighborhood or that area, the Buffalo Bills went to 4 Super Bowls. Yes, they didn't win, but it was absolutely it was electric for 4 years in Buffalo, and that's when I got there. Yeah. So yes, you're a young hockey player, having a great time, and then you get invited to an event. You're meeting Jim Kelly and Bruce Smith and Thurman Thomas and other players. And these guys are like, household names on Sundays, and it was like there was a real pride, and it was fun. And we hung out with a bunch of these guys. Glenn Parker was a offensive guard for the Bills for many years. He went to 6 Super Bowls himself, even after Buffalo. I think he went one with New York and one with Kansas City, possibly, or 2 with New York. Yep. Great guy, great friend, great ally. Don Beebe, Pete Metzelaars, all these guys. Steve Christie, the kicker from Oakville. And those guys, albeit the NFL much larger than the NHL, they were Sabre fans, and they would show up, when they could, and they'd watch us and they'd cheer us on, and we'd go out after. It was a really cool time to be a hockey player in Buffalo. So now I'm asking for myself and for the listeners, because I mean, even me, a guy that got drafted by Buffalo, that was in the beginning, somewhat the beginning of HSBC Arena, right? So I never saw the Odd. I've never stood foot in that arena, but I've seen video and I've heard so many stories, man. And is the Odd, is it similar to what Maple Leaf Gardens was? Did it have a different feel? Was it louder? How would you compare those 2 arenas? You know what? I'm again, the golden age, right? You were talking about. So I got to play in the Chicago Stadium, the old Chicago Stadium. Oh man! I mean, the locker rooms, or certainly the visitors' locker room, was terrible, right? It was terrible in Buffalo. It was terrible in Montreal. It was terrible at the Boston Garden, right? In Boston, they had great teams, Ray Bourque and all these great, Cam Neely. The Boston Garden, they were all shitholes. If you wanted to compare the venues to today, but they all had their own character. St. Louis had a. We only went there once or twice, I think. my first year, but we used to play in the fairgrounds at this arena that had 20,000 seats, and it was loud and crazy and just like chaotic, right? When you went there, all those buildings have either been torn down or they're mothballed today. But the odd of all of them, I don't care about the other ones. When I say Montreal Forum and Maple Leaf Gardens, obviously are amazing, right? But to me, my favorite rink, like of all time, is the Buffalo Auditorium. My greatest memory of like individually happened in that arena, but of all the time I spent there, it's my favorite rink of them all. It was a smaller ice surface, like some of the other rinks had. Boston Garden, very similar, but it was imposing. I don't think visiting teams, they either knew they were coming into Buffalo, they were going to get beat. When you had Anderchuk, McGillney, LaFontaine, and Howard Chuck, right? Like it's a pretty good lineup up front. You had Dominic Hasek and Grant Fuhr as goaltenders, and Clint Malarchuk and Darren Pupu was a runner-up for the Vezina. Yeah, you're either going to get beat or you're going to get beaten up. Now you could choose one or the other, but you weren't going to get both. You weren't coming into Buffalo and going to win both those categories, and that was part of the game back then. You could beat us, but we'll beat you up, or you could beat us up and we'd beat you. Either way, but there was goal scorers, and then there was chaos, and I'm proud to say that I was a little brother to Rob Ray and Gord Donnelly my first year, who took, I'm sure, a huge burden off me. You know what it's like to be a guy that's relied upon in that department. When I didn't have to necessarily worry about Bob Probert because Rob or Gord were, I ended up getting Terry Karkner, who was very tough, but I got Terry Karkner, not Probert, and when we went into or New York at one year and they had Joey Kosher and Ty Domi, Gord Donnelly and Rob Ray, it was like 1-2. They already had their beefs and disputes. And then who's number 3 in New York? I can promise you this. He wasn't number 3 in Buffalo. You know what I mean? Number 3 in Buffalo is going to win every night.
Yeah.
And
that was the difference.
And I also had the ability, I say ability because the coaches gave me it, to either decide to or not, because I got to play a little bit more than those guys, so I actually had outs if I needed them, right? And I recognized, I'm not dumb, that sometimes, hey, listen, you're having a good game. I don't have to fight. I don't have to take it into the corner, into the gutter. So some nights I was able to kind of avoid maybe a shitty situation, right? And where other players didn't have that luxury. So being a first rounder, maybe all of that coupled and combined, afforded me the opportunity to maybe fight on my terms more than not, where other players were sometimes, if they wanted to get on the ice, they had to do something,
Oh yeah.
So
see, now, Mayday, this is what I love about you, because this is very humble talk, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Now, I don't find that you're giving yourself enough credit, because, dude, what I see, me being a stat guy, me being the guy that when we went into the visitors' dressing room, I was the first guy to grab the stat pack, okay? So that's me, okay? So what I'm seeing is the same thing on a different level, but the same kind of approach that you did, the same thing in the NHL that you did in Major Junior. You went above and beyond and took it among yourself to be known as the guy. Bro, you come into the NHL and you get 300 penalty minutes your first year, right?
I love it.
That's like unheard of, Mayday.
I don't think
first year.
I don't know if anybody else has done it. I'm not sure.
I don't think so, man. I don't think so. I could look it up.
But I had, with that being said, I had a great environment around me, right? It was LaFontaine, McGillney, who was a young guy, but he was, what a player he was, right? But to the leadership group, guys, Randy Moeller and Dean Kennedy, who was only there for about a month, but Dean Kennedy is one of my biggest allies. I don't know if you remember that name. He was a captain of the Winnipeg Jets. He started with Kings. Dean Kennedy took me aside when I was a young guy, when I first got to Buffalo. And he and his wife Tammy, they were like, listen, they fostered this young guy. I don't want to miss any names. You know, that's the thing when I start talking about, but there's so many guys that actually did things for me, you know, and that's the way the game was. I don't know if it's like that anymore. I don't, because I'm not in that room every day, but
Yeah.
I had these older players. They taught, you know, they taught me, they gave me shit when I'd show up because I didn't eat breakfast and I ate pizza last night, and I show up and I just don't look like, I look haggard, you know, ragged, and they're hey kid, you're not in junior anymore. Nobody's making your meals. You gotta, you know, you gotta do things for yourself. You gotta do this. If you ever show up like that again, we're gonna give it to you. And so it wasn't always like, hey, give. It was tough love, right? But I came from a family like that. If you care about somebody, right? And I think having that going forward, it'll never disappear from me. I just want to give back to the next guy, or as a 50-year-old now. If anybody did want to listen to me, I'm all ears and I'm ready. You know what I mean? Like, I'll tell you my story. I'll give you my opinion, and I think it's pretty accurate and pretty good advice. The question is that young athlete, are they willing to put the time in and do what's necessary? That's really, at the end of the day, it comes from within. But so it's nature versus nurture, right? We've heard that argument. I think it's both. I think it's both. But the actual nature that you're in could be in a toxic environment, toxic locker room. And players don't grow. They won't grow to their potential. And I think that's the problem with bad teams, or teams that are bad. I shouldn't say bad teams. Teams that are bad, they don't have necessarily those intangibles being taught to them on a daily basis. So that young rookie in a bad situation probably doesn't turn out to be a great veteran in a great situation. You know what I mean? It probably doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mayday, this is another thing I wanted to really ask you, buddy. Now, Mr. Pizzatelli, was he there from your rookie season?
Yeah, he was, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now this is another part of the game that I don't believe is the same. The type of camaraderie that's not even just the teammates, the equipment managers, the strength coaches. Man, did the Sabres ever have good ones? And one guy, Mr. Jim Pizzatelli, man, especially with the character role guys. And if you happen to fight, God bless you, because the man's going to take a big interest in you. He's going to make you feel very special. He's going to make you feel like you're coming into Hollywood, into his dressing room. Mayday, have you ever met, was anyone else like Pizza in your career? Anyone else?
They broke the mold with Pizza. He's unique, one of a kind, incredible. I'm still friends with him. We still talk. Friends with his son, his daughter, his wife, grandchildren. I love Pizza. Love the Pizzatellis. Here's the thing about the trainers, right? You're talking about the whole environment. Rip Simonek, right? The legendary trainer, equipment trainer in Buffalo, who's recently one of the greatest of all time, right? Then you go. Now, I was only in Rochester for 6 weeks in the Calder Cup run as I was a practice player, like a black ace they call us. So I was there at the end of my junior year. They had Kent Weisbeck as the trainer.
Kent Weisbeck, he's still there, buddy.
100%, right? And unbelievable guy. He comes from that same lineage. Pete Rogers, who ended up taking off, and he's been the long-term guy now with the Nashville Predators. Pete was in Rochester at the time. These guys learn, again, it's fostering with being taught the ropes. And these guys are lifers in the game. And I hope to think that most players that have gone through both organizations, but one entity, one organization, really understand how great those guys are. And you can't tell me, like Tiger Woods could win any major in any golf tournament, or any other golfer, right? Because they're talented. But they don't do it alone. They've got a caddy who's their shrink, their friend, whatever. The guy that's actually doing, maybe I say the hard work, but like coming up with the numbers. You can't win a tournament in golf without a great caddy. You can't be a good hockey player without great trainers. They prepare you, but they're like that comfy coat or comfy couch, where you go in before and you're having a hard day and you sit there, and it literally is. It's like going to see a shrink, because they've seen everything. They've seen every player, and the good ones, they recognize the guys that they can actually impact and they make a difference. And at times I'm sure that players, they don't need it, so they don't seek it out. But trainers on a hockey team literally are as important as that free agent that you're going to bring back into a locker room.
Yeah.
For sure, 100%.
Oh man, amen to that. Mayday, like pizza had such a big influence that when I would play like a preseason game, like I swear, man, I'm gonna ask if you felt the same. Part of like my preparation was like to impress Pizza, to impress my equipment manager. He would get me into a mindset that I was the toughest guy and that nothing could mess with me because I was a bad man. And he'd get into talking like Muhammad Ali and do all the head fakes, man. Remember all that? Like he just got me so excited to be there, right? And like I hope that the players these days, Mayday, can experience some of that stuff like we did, man.
100%. I wish everybody could experience that, but it is for a select the game of hockey anyways, and there's no doubt about it. Open your eyes, right? Like I talk, like I say, I talk a lot, and I'm a social guy, but you got to pay attention. You got to listen, and there's smallest little things that if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss, right? And the best advice doesn't come from necessarily, the coach or the captain. I mean, you've got a team of captains, if you will, but on a good team, good teams, good organizations, there's a number of people that can actually make a difference, if not everyone, right? And yeah, I love it. I love talking about it, and I love paying tribute to those guys that were a big part of what we did. Certainly, we've been talking about Buffalo, but on all the other teams that we played for, the argument or the discussion's the same. The hard part is some players are on their way up, some players are on their way down, some players are like trying to find themselves and their identity, and it takes a village to raise a kid, man. It really does. And in the game of hockey, I think it has all those elements. It really does. Like that locker room, instead of going out and getting a guy free agency today that might be able to score you 5 extra goals, you know what? That character, that the other player that doesn't score the 5 extra goals arguably could be more valuable depending on the makeup of your team. So I think because we're all about stats and we're all about, fantasy sports and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's about people, right? The character of the person is everything to me. And maybe it's not going to be my last, but your attitude determines your altitude. So if you got a shitty attitude, you ain't getting there for sure. Shitty attitudes, they wear you down, they wear everybody else down. If you got an optimistic guy that's willing to do whatever it takes, you can mold that player or that person into believing that they're better than what they really are. And Ted Nolan as my coach, he was number one for me for that. Teddy Nolan, he single-handedly, he would inspire and construct that personality for you or help you get there. And he's one of the greatest, one of my favorite people in hockey, no doubt.
I'm a big Ted Nolan fan too. Just like, and I mentioned him when I was asking about like that type of camaraderie, like to have Teddy Nolan as your coach, to have Razor and Barnaby on your side, as well as others on that team. Like to me, that was like the ultimate team. Like a team's team, like that Sabres team. Like I saw this video, Mayday. I posted it on my Facebook, and it was called like Rare 1990 Goals and Fights, and it had Teddy's picture. So I was drawn to it right away. But the majority of the video was your goals at the odd, and you and Razor's fights at the odd. Right? A lot of battles with the Quebec Nordiques, a lot of battles with the Boston Bruins. But what you could really hear was the crowd, man. Was just it's so authentic. I couldn't get over it. Now, I like to blab a little bit too, so I apologize. What I want to get into now, brother, was we're going to be talking about this arena. We're talking about the team. But the following season, your second year pro, was obviously a huge, huge year for you, right? We're talking about a great season. We're talking about an amazing playoff. We're talking about a big goal. We're talking about all of it, right? Now, I want to jump. Okay, so first of all, I gotta let my listeners know the production that you put up. So this guy played a full season that year. And when I say a full season, I mean he didn't miss any games. Now, to be as physical as Brad May and not miss a game in a season, man, you got to have a lot of things go right. You got to be really mentally tough, and you got to be able to experience a lot of pain and be able to play. And that's what this gentleman did. So that's the first thing I want to point out. The guy almost puts up 30 points that year. This guy has almost 250 penalty minutes, 242 penalty minutes to be exact. And this gentleman doesn't like to get 10-minute misconduct. So I know you were putting in the work. So now, playoff time. You got Dominic Hasek as your goalie. You got all these incredible superstars on the roster. You guys are a good team, Mr. May. Okay? So now, this game 4, it goes into overtime. Now, you guys are up 3-0 in the series. Now, Mayday, I don't know what the situation with Boston was, but you guys must have just been on fire because I think they were a pretty good team that year. And you guys really, really like punked them off in that first round, right? But regardless of that, we're talking legendary players like Raymond Bourque, okay? So we're in overtime. Now, these are the facts. I want to talk about this a little bit different, Mayday. I know a lot of people bring this up, brother. I want to talk the facts of what happened, but then I want to talk about the impact of what it had for people like me and a lot of other Canadians and a lot of other hockey fans in general, seeing that goal that you scored, okay? So now let's go over the facts. First of all, the guy sliding that made the tape pass, that was Mr. Patty LaFontaine, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so this guy's sliding. I don't know how he did it, Mayday. I mean, I'm sure you've pictured it a million times. I don't even know if you saw what he was doing or if you were just watching the puck, but you had a great angle. You're cutting through the middle. I've heard you explain this, right? You're doing a great job. You get that pass tape to tape. What are you thinking when you see Raymond Bourque, though? You're like, Jesus, this is Ray Bourque.
The amazing part, so going into the playoffs, the Boston Bruins were the best team in the league. Their record, I think they won 19 of 21 games or something going in thereabouts. It was really,
the hottest team.
Strong finish for that team, and they were the best team. We struggled. We lost the last 7 games of the season, but we knew we were playing. So part of it was almost like sacrificing games to get in shape. So John Muckler had us doing, stuff that you'd never do in season. And so half our team was probably gassed, right, going into some of these games. But we actually were developing our game plan for the Boston Bruins. That's the interesting thing about, back then you knew who you were playing. It wasn't finding out 2 days before the playoffs start, right?
Yeah.
The last day.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal. Obviously, we had our goalies were Grant Fuhr and Dominic Hasek was a backup that year. And I say
Hasek was the backup?
Yeah. So Fierzy was our guy. So we won that series. Dominic came in game 4, but Fierzy played the first 3 games. And then he played all 4 games against Montreal. And we lost. Montreal went on to win the Stanley Cup, whatever. But Dominic came in at the last game. Halfway through or in the third period or whatever it was, we were down 5-2 going into the third period. Buffalo hadn't made it out of the playoffs in 10 years. Kind of think of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
First round.
In the first round. They've never made it past the first round in 10 years.
Okay.
And they've been in the playoffs, but they're playing Montreal, they're playing Boston, they're getting beat, those 2 teams. So think of the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. They've been struggling to get out of the out of the first round in their division. Something like this. This is kind of like what I maybe envision for Toronto, right? This year, whoever they play, it's going to be a big moment if they got past that first round. It's like they call it the monkey on your back, right? Or off your back.
Oh, yeah.
So going into the third period, we ended up coming back. Yuri Himlev scores with like 10 seconds to go in the third period for us to tie up the game. So now we got a chance. I'm on the ice. I'm playing with LaFontaine and McGillney and as their left winger, and I'm tasked pretty much through the first 3 or this is the 4th game, but basically we're on the ice. Ray Bourque's on the ice and Don Sweeney. And every time Ray gets the puck, I hit him. Like basically just stop him, hit him, take runs, do whatever you can. Don't let him up the ice past you, basically. As long as he's in front of you, Brad, you do whatever you want. We don't even care if you touch the puck. That was kind of the idea. And that happens. I get the puck, and I don't know if I really remember it now. I've seen it so many times, but I made a move. As a junior player, you come into the National Hockey League. There's certain things that work. You can toe drag guys. You can try it anyways. Well, you get to the National Hockey League and you try things. If it doesn't work out, your coach is on you. Like, it pretty much has to be fail safe, right? Like, Brad, you're not good enough to challenge a guy one-on-one, get it behind them, and then keep the play going, kind of thing. And so it comes down to odds. You don't want to give up pucks at the blue line, feed their transition, right? Neutral zone. And anyways, I'm just, at the time, I'm a stubborn kid, and he put me on the first line with McGillney and LaFontaine. You got a little bit of, you got almost like you have a cape, like you can do more things. If I'm on the third or fourth line, you ain't doing that. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to have that puck picked off and them go down and score, right? Like, so you're not making that play. So you become very safe in your play or your approach to play, obviously. Whatever happened, I was able to get the puck through Ray's feet, and the rest is history. But I was able to, little pump fake on Andy Moog. One of probably the greatest night of my life, really, like, as a hockey player, other than being a winner with a team, right? But as an individual, is certainly the greatest moment I had, for sure. It was awesome.
Dude, I mean, first of all, it was an OT NHL winner in the playoffs. Like you said, Buffalo hadn't got past the first round in the previous 10 seasons. Now, on top of that, it's in the Buffalo Auditorium, downtown Buffalo, when the city was in its heyday. It's so many things combined, right?
Like, honestly, it takes me back, and I've seen pictures, so I know faces from the pictures, right? But it was electric. It was loud, like every building when you win. But I don't know, when you're there, you're a gladiator in the stadium. You're on the middle of the ice, and you can hear it from all angles. Where the fan hears the noise from where they are. Like, we get the best of it all, right? When you're sitting at center ice celebrating afterwards, and you can hear it and see it. There's no doubt. I wish everybody could actually enjoy or have that opportunity or experience something like that, because it was like, I don't know what euphoria is, right? But I think that's what it is.
That could be it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now, and thank you for sharing that, Mayday. Now it's Mayday because it's happened. So now, this is what I want to discuss really about it, is the impact. The impact. Now, I want to know if you've talked about it like this before. So I'm going to tell you, Mr. Brad May, what that goal did for me, a Canadian kid from Scarborough, watching that. That was 93, so I was 11 years old, okay? First started watching the NHL. That was the most excitement that I had ever seen adults playing sports at my age. When I saw Dominic Hasek jumping up, and he's got the cage, and you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't believe it. I was drawn to it. I was an automatic fan. That's the first point. It won me over to be a lifelong fan as soon as it happened, because I'm like, you know what? I want to be a part of this type of excitement, man. I'm 11 years old. I can't believe what I'm seeing. Just these huge men, these adults jumping up. I've never seen anything like it before. Okay, so okay, I'm getting excited as I talk about it here, Mitty. So now the third part was, I kept seeing it, Mayday. You know why? Because of Tim Cherry and Don with Rock'em Sock'em.
Yep.
So now my sister, who bought Rock'em Sock'em every Christmas, now that's made the most entertaining Christmas. It must have been the following one that, you know what I mean? But man, that was my favorite part of that volume of Rock'em Sock'em. Okay, so that adds to the list. And then when I first realized how close a sports team can actually be, was also watching that celebration of you, Dom, the Dominator, and the rest of your teammates, right? So, like, honestly, Mr. Brad May, Sean McMorrow became a hockey fan from the Mayday goal, man. And I believe you, there's tens of thousands of people just like me.
That makes Thank you. That makes me feel awesome. But I've ran into a number of people from, I played in Vancouver, but from coast to coast, St. John's, Newfoundland to whatever, where people say they remember. It's interesting. They remember where they were in that moment when they saw that goal, and they or you know what I mean. With
yeah.
Rick's call and all, when it was all put together, people actually, they say they remember it, right? Guys that were at their weddings, and the guys, all the men disappeared, from the wedding because they were watching overtime in Buffalo, and you get those stories, right? And one guy in Buffalo, that his wife was having a baby, and he actually was like more interested at that moment to actually see the TV out of the corner of his eye, and actually participating. And so all these different stories, it's pretty cool. It really is. I think that's what sports does for us. And that's like, I'm a big sports fan. I'm more about the playoffs and the big moments. I don't really watch the league play necessarily and all these other sports, but you pull out the World Cup of soccer. For me, I didn't play soccer. So, right. I love it. I remember those big moments in those other sports. Tiger Woods for me is my favorite athlete of all time. And I hope he still has a chance to come back and win, because I'll be there to watch. Like I'm part of that army. But yeah, what's really cool that you just said that we as hockey players have had that impact on other people. That's pretty cool.
100%, buddy. And I guarantee you, listeners that are listening, I bet you 80% of them said, I feel the same way that Sean does. I'm telling you, man, it was such a big impact. And I wanted to tell you, because I know it's cool to hear things from different angles and stuff. And like, I don't know if you've ever talked about the Mayday goal like that as an impact, as a cultural, or like that was very iconic, my man. Like, that was very iconic moment in sports for a guy from Southern Ontario, from Toronto, to see that in Buffalo. Like, obviously I have a bias. I'm a Sabres guy, but I know there's a lot of people like me, man. And I'm telling you, it was something incredibly special.
Hey, sorry, Sean.
No, go ahead, please.
No, there's just two quick things. So just in that vein, Rick Jenneret got inducted in the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
I want to say 2014, maybe thereabouts. And I was there, and it was the same year that Joe Sakic got inducted in the Hall of Fame. I played with Joe, and we were there with his family, for the night that he actually, went up on stage, and it was really, really cool to see. They played the Mayday goal when Rick went into the Hall of Fame.
Yes,
with all that. So I'm sitting there, and it was really cool. I mean, that's the only way I'm getting there, right? People.
That's your goal, man.
but of course, his voice is just so great, and so that's one thing. And then during this thing, I've been doing TV work and stuff. I was working for the Sabres, but I went out to LA in the 100th anniversary, which is where they, celebrated the 100-year anniversary, but the top 100 players in the world, and they have this. On the rollout, I guess it must have been on TV. I was there live, so I don't know. But on the video, they played, I don't know if it would be the top 100 moments. Maybe there was more, but of those moments, it showed video of most of the players that were there, right? Their iconic moments. And it led off. It either led off or ended. No, it led off the whole thing. I'm sitting beside, not far from Cam Neely and Mark Messier, the two of them. And at that moment in LA at this theater, and they played the Mayday goal.
No way.
Top 100 moments in the National Hockey League. Now, that maybe I got a friend in the video department. I'm not sure, but I was sitting there. I had no business being in that auditorium with those other players, truly, right? Like, but I'm a fan. I'm a friend of some of them. I was with Paul Coffey, and great dude. And we were there, and they played that call. And I swear to God, Mark Messier, who I played with in Vancouver, he's like, "What the fuck is wrong with this picture?" He goes, "That's unbelievable. You're not even supposed to be here." One of those. It was really funny. But yeah, it's part of the fabric, right? Part of the history of the game. And being associated with that, being part of it, doing it, whatever. But understanding and being humble enough to understand that, like, I don't take any of it for granted, dude. It was pretty fun. It's pretty fun.
Awesome, man. And it's so cool to hear you say stuff like that. Like I don't take it for granted and stuff because like I'm telling you, Mayday, like you're a really big like example. You a lot of guys like like I say that you're one of my idols, right? Like a lot of people follow you. So just to know that that you're as humble as you are, it means more, is what I'm really trying to say. It's so legit, man, and I appreciate it so much. Now, I know I'm going to jump a lot here, but I want to jump to February 27th, 2007, when you got
Yes.
traded to the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. Okay? So now, what me as a hockey fan, I want to ask you, dude, you're getting traded to this team. Now, it's not that long ago. How good was the team at the moment of the trade? Like, were they one of the favorites for the cup at that time, or were they just like a good team that still had something to prove at trade deadline?
The start of that season, so I was in Colorado in training camp.
Yeah.
I dislocated my shoulder, so I was out for 5 months. I had my fourth shoulder surgery, the same thing, Bankart reconstruction. So that was my fourth, second time on my left shoulder. That's the start. That's the start of the story. So I hadn't even played. I got back. I played a few games for Colorado and kind of understood that if I don't get traded, this is gonna be tough to re-sign and keep her going, right? Like you don't.
Yeah.
So play your ass off. Hopefully, whatever happens, either our team gets on a roll. But we were kind of at that moment, we were kind of struggling in Colorado, anyways. And I got traded at the deadline to Anaheim. Anaheim had the best record, or one of the best records ever, off the start of the season.
Okay.
So the answer is they were a great team. Now there were other great teams that had an opportunity too, but Anaheim was definitely one of the top, call it top six, top eight teams for sure.
Yeah.
I would even go higher than that, but there were other teams that thought that they could win too. Detroit being the best team in the West, right? You had Buffalo and Ottawa in the East that were rolling too. I get traded to Anaheim, and I'd only played a few games. 3 months later, we win the Stanley Cup, or 3 months and a week later, we win the Cup on June 6th. Never forget it. The one thing I can say is I didn't screw up their chemistry. That's a big, right? But I got there. But think about the team we had. We were really good. Brian Burke's assembled this team. Obviously, Brian Murray had drafted players earlier than that. So it takes the whole history of the team to get to that point, right? But Berkey was unreal. Randy Carlyle was a tough commander, but he ran the bench and he was like detailed, like really detail oriented. You got Scott Niedermeyer and Chris Pronger on the blue line, basically eating, the two of them eating half the night of, they're on the ice basically. And if they don't play together, which they didn't, one of them's on the ice for 50 minutes of the game. It would appear. You're going to probably win most games when that's the case. Then you got Teemu Selanne, but all of us, a bunch of us, Todd Marchant, Rob Niedermeyer, Teemu, myself, Sean O'Donnell, and I don't want to forget him, but we were all older guys that had played anywhere from 13 to 16 years. I was 16 years to that point and never had a sniff. A few of these guys got to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final in 2003 and lost to New Jersey, the guys there. Yeah. Scotty won that year with New Jersey and beat his brother's team. So we had a lot of passion and literally in desperation. Then you're coupled with Chris Kunitz, Dustin Penner, Corey Perry. Chris ended up winning 4 Stanley Cups, 3 with Pittsburgh and 1 with us. Getzlaf and Perry haven't got close. Have not got there. Or Corey has twice, but you know what? It's fleeting. It's not a guarantee. They thought they'd probably win 5 cups, right?
Yeah.
After so early, Penner went on to win 2 cups, another one with LA. You know what? These experiences, that's why these other teams go on to do well, because of the experience that those players would have, right? And that's why experience is a great teacher. It's a great teacher, but playing in Anaheim was fantastic. I was so fortunate to get drafted or traded there. And Brian Burke's he's my favorite GM. He's probably my biggest ally in hockey. I played for him for 4 different teams. I love Berkey. Through in it, like all the way through, this guy he traded me 3 times or got rid of me, and he basically tried to retire me too, right? But he did. He picked me up 3 times and acquired me once, or assumed me when he took over in Vancouver. Love the man, and I love the guys you win with, man. Like that's so great. And the cool part too is you're just a part of it, right? Like the nice part about hockey is everybody played a part. There's players that Mark Hardigan played a game, did well, made a big. Drew Miller came in and made a big impact. Played not a lot of games, but he played games. Ryan Shannon was awesome, right? Joe Motzko. Nobody ever heard of Joe Motzko before, and even after probably he was over in Europe. But Joe Motzko came in and played incredibly hard. Ryan Carter was a young guy who's doing TV in Minnesota. You got players like this that people wouldn't know it, is I guess my point. And they came in and made an impact. Yeah. Kent Huskin, like our whole team, every guy that was there did something incredibly well to actually help our chance to move on. And if they weren't there at that moment, it could have went the other way, 100%. Like, it's not that easy. Like, we were a great team. I think that we could have beat anybody, but we could have lost to Minnesota in the first round too. And we beat them 4-1. The games were tight. Yeah. Marian Gaborik was running like he was so good. Like one bounce the other way, you never know what happens. So pretty cool,
man. And that type of insight is priceless, because I'm telling you, man, like you just covered a lot of ground there, like getting people to understand all the different roles. There's so many roles that need to be filled, and you could have such a good team, but you just don't have those other roles filled, and that's the difference, right? So
yeah.
Man, that's important. Okay, so like Mayday, the thing about you, buddy, is you played for so long. There's so many things to talk about. Right now I'm just picking and choosing. I need to talk to you about being a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I heard a story when I was doing my research that it was so important to you to have that game against the Sabres, right? When Red Kelly gave you that silver stick, that you actually asked to sit out the game before so it would work out. Is that true?
Not entirely.
Okay.
Actually, I think it's better than that.
Okay.
But about 3 weeks earlier, or 2 weeks earlier, we were in Ottawa skating around, and Ron Wilson was my coach in Toronto, and he takes me aside, but he comes skating up beside me before we were going to start practice, and he's like, "Hey, I've been looking at the schedule. I don't know what it was. Let's say that there's 12 games left or 15 games left in the season, something like that, and you have to play in 12 of them. But this is the game. But he circled it. He goes, or however it was. If you play every game between now and you're in that game, providing that you don't get injured, you're going to play against X. How would you like to play your 1000th game against the Buffalo Sabres? Yeah, on a Saturday night in Toronto." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's the greatest thing ever." He's like, "Okay, but here's the deal. I can't sit you out. We can't manipulate it now, because what happens if we leave 6 games to go and then you get injured and you miss it? We got to get you close. But you're going to have to miss a couple games to actually get there. To actually be in that moment on that night with your mom and dad at center ice and your family." And wow. I was like, "Are you kidding me? That's unbelievable." So I owe all of that to Ron Wilson, and I imagine Brian Burke had a piece of that, but if he didn't, I haven't had that conversation. I owe that moment to Ron Wilson, because he was and not getting injured, right? So yeah, we got to the point. I missed a couple games, whatever it was, and other players got a chance to come in and play. But the night before, the night before we played that game was in New Jersey. We played against the Devils, and he sat me out. So we went into New York City, and he was like, "Hey, Brad, I don't care when you get to the rink, just show up. Like, if there's a night that you can go and celebrate in New York City and not worry about playing hockey the next day, take advantage of it, because you're not playing whatever, you're playing on Saturday, and just make sure that you're ready to play Saturday." And so I really awesome. It makes me feel like it was a special moment, but it wasn't my choice. Certainly had a part of it by my enthusiasm, but that's all Ron Wilson.
Wow, and that's absolutely incredible. Kind of shows like, how much the guy just cared, how you know what I mean? Like you hear stories about like, and like I don't want to like, you know what I mean? But you hear stories about, that other coach that a lot of guys miss milestones. The guy that got fired from Toronto, I don't even the gentleman, I'm talking about,
Yeah, he was my
right?
last coach. Right. Yeah.
Okay, so you know what I mean? Like you hear stories like that, and so you got to be happy, man, that people will go out of their way because they personally care, right?
No, for sure. And the other part, and not to get bogged down there, is he had four rookies. And one of them in particular, I think, played his first game that night, and in the opening puck drop's irrelevant. But it's not like football, the starting lineup, right? Hockey's a fluid game, but he put out all the four like young guys, like rookies. I'm saying in the starting lineup when we listen to the national anthem after the ceremony, to start to see it, to feel it, to kind of maybe inspire them to try to dream to be there. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Wow.
it's a cool moment. And my teammates were sick. They were so great. Jamal Mayers being one of them, and Pavel Kubina and Caberlet and Nicky Antropoff, Matt Stage, and these guys. They gave me the nicest watch. I'd only been there for half a year, and they together that collected money, and they bought me a watch that I don't wear often because it's just way too nice for me, but it's the most coolest thing ever. And it's really cool to have that, I guess, respect from your teammates, but equally I so appreciate them.
Wow, man. So where's the silver stick?
The silver stick is at my dad's house. That's where it is. He's got a great spot, and it's the perfect spot for it. And that's where it is. To be honest, I'm not a memorabilia guy. So if you ask me where a lot of these other things are, I don't even know if I have them. But yeah, my dad has a nice home and the space and the room for it. So that's where it's at.
Mr. Mayday, man, you have no idea how incredible these past 2 hours have been. The type of insight that you gave, sir, like I can't even tell you how much I appreciate it because, like I told you, bro, I'm a fan just like a former player, but the fan in me tonight really, really had a very, very good time, Mr. May. And like I said, just the stories that you told alone, like it's absolutely priceless hearing it from you, right? And I'm so glad that you gave your input on the whole Buffalo area and organization. That was very important to me as well. I really wanted you to know, because I know I speak on behalf of so many people, the impact that you had playing for the Sabres for people from Southern Ontario and upstate Western New York. You're probably the reason why many people started playing hockey, seeing that type of excitement. That got me hooked as a lifelong fan. Um, and everything else in between, sir. I just appreciate it. I know we're going to be getting a lot of call-ins, a lot of emails about this episode of people commenting on the different stories. So I wanted to thank you personally, buddy. Hats off. You're a great entertainer, my man. I didn't even get it. Didn't even have a chance to get into the broadcasting, but I now see why you're been given opportunities, bro, because you're one entertaining gentleman.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. In conclusion, you know what? I've talked to my buddies who have been on your show or on your podcast. I know you. I study hockey. I don't know every player, but I know where you were, where you came from, what you did, and thank you for having me. I've equally enjoyed the last little bit of time, or 2 hours, whatever it's been. What I'm doing now, I want to tell you this because I want to give you
Yes, I was
this.
going to ask you about some current stuff before we go.
Just before you go. So I'm working with a travel company. We're called Executive Global Tours. My partner's out in New York. I'm the Canadian contingent. And what we're doing is we're taking big groups or small groups on trips, bucket list trips, especially after COVID. All I want to do for the next 10 years is travel with my friends and go places I've never been and have bucket list experiences with the people I love and want to be with. and meet new people. So what we do is we take big groups. Think of like all the alumni associations of every team, college football, basketball, baseball, whatever, but hockey being my primary sport. Going over to St. Andrews, playing golf for a week, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, France. I'm off in 2 days to go to France with the French tourist board to go look at properties and stuff that we're going to do a tour or tours, whatever sport and whatever group wants to go. But one of my first things, my maiden voyage, and it's not 100% yet, but we're right there, right near the finish line, is we're going to Ireland at the end of the summer, the last week. 27th is a Saturday of August, and we're going over. I'm taking about 10 to 12 hockey players, and we're going to go over and we're going to play golf with the people that join us, which is awesome. We're going to play golf, and we're going to do a tour. We're going to play Northern Ireland. We're going to Belfast, which is your old stomping grounds. We're going to go to Glasgow, Nottingham, and Cardiff at this moment, with the hopes of kicking off every season in the British Premier League, to go to every team, bringing a traveling band of NHL alumni to go and play, but also couple it with a golf tour. So my invitation to you, Sean, is I would like you to join me and us to come to on me, and I can walk you through the whole economics of it all, because it's just the way it is. It's as transparent as it comes. You join us, you play with us, and you play golf. We're going to play some of the best courses, British Open courses, and it'll be a week of hockey and golf and fun, and it'll be a bucket list trip for my hockey players, but also the gentlemen or ladies that would join us that will come on this trip, and it'll be basically a hockey and golf road trip starting in Belfast, which is your stomping ground, and you'd be the hit. You'd be like, I'll give you the C. You come on. Actually, that's not true. I'll give you the A, because I'm working on Owen Nolan. He was born in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, he was born there. Yes.
If I can land Owen Nolan, he's the captain 100%, because he is the prodigal son coming home.
Yes, he is.
I will give you a letter on this trip to come, because you know it and they know you, and you'd be a big hit over there with us.
Oh man, it would be such an honor to come. I appreciate the invitation, and I accept it 100%, my friend. That's incredible. I really appreciate it.
I just got to they're just working on the scheduling of these things, but that's what we're doing. That's one of them. I've got a bunch of other stuff that I'm working on right now, but effectively it's a travel company that is not giving away, offering bucket list type of experience for fans alike, for their fan bases. And if anybody has any ideas, I'm welcome. My Mayday at executiveglobaltours.com. Mayday.
Yes, I was just about to ask you. So let's say
we're on all those platforms.
Okay, could you say it one more time, Mayday? So if someone has an idea, if someone wants to promote, if someone wants to help, anything at all, how do they get a hold of it again?
Well, so my Twitter, I'm Mayday Hockey everywhere.
Yes, Mayday Hockey.
So Mayday Hockey at Instagram, Mayday Hockey at Twitter. So that's probably the best way to do it. But the actual company, I can't even remember what the handle is. But if you follow me, you'll see the posts or likes that I have.
Yes.
Executive Global. I think it's exec_tours or something on those platforms. But the company is executiveglobaltours.com. But
awesome.
And I think I want to deliver these fun experiences for all. My buddies, number one, and then everybody else that wants to come with us. Yeah.
Man, that just the idea alone is spectacular. The fact that it's a reality and that you're actually doing it is unbelievable, man. That's incredible. I really hope some of the listeners
and you're
look into this.
You're going to be a captain.
Mayday, man. You made my day, that's for sure, buddy. That's awesome. Well, dude, you know what? Let's end it on a great note. But before we go there, I got to put a little bit of pressure on you. Is Brad May, Mr. Mayday, willing to come back for a part 2 on the Sheriff podcast?
100%. I just, you know what? I've been calling you Sean. I should have asked you the same question, Sean or Sheriff.
Hey, you call me whatever you want, sir.
Hey, I'm coming on. Yes, 100%. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Awesome. I really appreciate it, buddy, because I really enjoyed it, and I know the listeners did. This is I had so much fun, buddy. You have no idea. And yeah, this is incredible. And like, I mean, I could repeat myself 100 times, but the point is I love this episode today. We got through so many of the issues that I wanted to get through. You're such a good speaker. I can't wait till we have the part 2, and I strongly accept your invitation with lots of gratitude, my friend.
Love it, brother. Hey, thank you very much.
I want to thank the listeners. Sorry, go ahead, Mayday.
No, thank you.
Yes. Oh, no. Thank you for saying that. I wanted to thank the listeners for tuning into another episode of The Sheriff featuring special guest, Mr. Brad May. It's been a great one, guys. We're going to sign out. Woo!